Right, good evening everyone, including those who just popped in out of the rain. Welcome to the Castlethorpe Community Space AGM. Also welcome those watching on the video stream through the wonders of modern technology that will begin to understand. The meeting's being streamed on the Parish Council YouTube channel and is accessible to the general public. So if we can bear that in mind when speaking, and I'll try and do the same. For housekeeping, I think virtually all of you know the layout of the building, and you'll have emergency exits there and there in my best SQLS way, and a disabled toilet over there, men's and women's over there. Okay, so just a little bit of background. This project started a project to actually get community space together when dear old Simon Hill admitted that he would not be reopening the pub, something that he said he would do for a long time, but I don't think anyone ever believed him. And I think it was in 2022 that he finally said that he wouldn't be reopening it. So we would be for a few more years without social space to meet and enjoy each other's company. So the Parish Council formed a project team consisting of a few parish councillors, 3 to be exact, and some very, very able villagers who brought tremendous skills to the project team. And went on to form a community interest company, which is Castlethorpe Community Space, which the villagers were invited to join and did in their droves, and we have a very healthy membership, and we see tonight a good degree of interest, which is refreshing. Okay, that project team assumed the role of director when it came through, with the aim of people restanding for directorship of the first AGM, the first practical opportunity, and here we are. I'm Steve Bradbury. I think most of you know me. I'm the interim chair, and interim means that I didn't step back as quickly as everyone else when the position became vacant, and here I am. Joined tonight by fellow directors Phil Ayles, Gordon Fleming, Russell Fortune, and Ian Gordon, who's not here tonight. And tonight will look something like this. After I finish my ramblings, I'll hand over to Phil, who'll give a presentation that will actually fill you in on everything that's been going on and looking forward at getting this community space in place. I'd ask you to keep questions to the end, and when you come to ask questions, we'll see how it goes, but I think for the size of the ball, we'll probably shout it out and we can repeat it for the benefit of the streaming. After that, current board will step down, and Gordon, the company secretary, will announce the results that we've had of the new directors. 11 people have stood, and before that, the result of a resolution to set the maximum number of directors to 8. The Articles of Association that we started with had a lower limit of 3, but had no upper limit. So we've got the resolution in there for that. So the result of that resolution, and if that passes, then there will be 8 directors announced from the ballot that's just taken place. I don't know about anyone else, but after that, I'll hang around, and if anyone's got any questions or wants to discuss anything, I think probably fellow current directors, I'll leave the suspense to see if they're directors in the future. And we'd like it to be a positive meeting. We're aware that we've had 2 attempts to actually get an operator in and get this thing we'll see this as a long-term thing, and we want something for the village for many years to come. And we're positive that it can work, even though there have been 2 attempts that have started very well and shown good signs of being successful, but for various reasons haven't. So, without any further ado, I'll hand over to Phil to actually give a PowerPoint or whatever Google equivalent is presentation. And like I say, if you keep any questions to the end of the presentation, be obliged. So over to you, Will.
Okay, just give me half a moment to put the presentation onto the live stream. I want to share the slides. Wouldn't like anyone to miss out. Apologise for all these gubbins around here. This Heath Robinson affair, but the important thing is it's free. Bits out of Russell's cupboard and my cupboard that we've put together. That should be sharing now. Right. So if I stand, hopefully we'll do that. So just to gauge the age of the audience, who recognises what that is? Oh, you're all too young. Oh. It's a punch card. They used to use these in the 1960s and 70s. Anyway, there you go. They're great for making little notes on. You're too young, Faith. You definitely are. Anyway, so the board report is going to, let me move down there, is going to summarise the legal structure of what we are, the responsibilities that we've got, because I think there are some misunderstandings as to exactly what CCS does and can do, the financial situation that we've got, and then we'll talk a bit about the current tenancy, of course. The viability of it, Steve has touched on it. I'll show you some figures that I hope will show that this is actually a viable operation. The problems that have been encountered as we perceive them, which have been a block to the 2 tenants that have been there, and we think those can be overcome. Some future options, because a number of you have written to different members of us to say, how about this as a way to work? You know, it's slightly different to just having a tenancy. So just want to talk through, got 3 options there. And we just talk through those. Of course, there's probably an infinite number, but if we just talk through those 3 as a way forward. And then the next steps that the new board will have to take. And it's going to meet next week, next Wednesday, will be its first meeting. And finally, the process that we'll have to go through if we decide that we're going to get a new tenant in there. And spoiler alert, it isn't going to be quick. You know, we're not going to be opening this in the next month or 2. It just takes longer than that to get going. Let me start anyway. So just to explain what the legal structure is, the Parish Council owns the sports ground, of course. It owns the old cricket pavilion and everything else that's up there. And I've just shown on the right-hand side, it also owns the ground that the shop's on, and there's a community interest company there, which incidentally could do with some more members, if anyone's got interest in that. And then it's subleased to Moody and Dina. So in a similar way, over here, Parish Council's got a sports ground. It then leases to 2 organisations, the Sports Association, which obviously, you know, cricket, football and tennis organisations, and Castlethorpe Community Space, us, okay? And we then sublease to a tenant, and we also actually have an agreement for cricket to use the changing rooms exclusively, because obviously that's It's part of the same building, but not for the tenant to have. That's the way it is. The parish council is responsible for maintaining the pavilion building itself. We're the ultimate, or it is the ultimate landlord, sorry, which hat I've got here. Insurance, and for the shared areas such as the car park and the footpath that goes across it. And CCS, if I use that abbreviation, Castlethorpe Community Space, CCS is responsible for the tenant, for our sins. So what are we? We're a limited company, but instead of having shareholders, we've got members. 613, I think, of us altogether across the village. And I hope you've got your wallets with you. If we go bust, you're in for a quid each. Okay? And our role is to lease the red area. It's not coming out great on this slide, but I think you can make it out. The red area that goes around there, with the exception of the yellow bit, which is, you know, there's a cricket palisade there. Yeah, they're responsible for that. But other than that, that's the area that we've got. We have to appoint a tenant or whatever, an operator certainly, sign the agreement and get some rent, in theory. Make sure the tenant complies with the agreement, maintain basically the inside of it. So if we've had one or two, well, we've actually had quite a few electricity problems in the early days, as some of you know, and that was our responsibility. The outside, which is all pretty new, is the parish council's responsibility. We help the tenant if requested, and we have given help. And we've got to maintain a prudent financial position. I'll explain what that means in a minute. And decide if we get rent starting to come in. The idea is we should be getting a reasonable rent, a bit below market rates, because we want to make this thing commercially viable, but we should be getting a significant amount of rent. And we can use that rent for improving the pavilion itself, and I'll come on to a couple of ideas that the current board has got for that. But it can also be, that money can also be used generally for the community. It's a community interest company, so if there's something else needed other than the pavilion, then we could use that money. But I'm guessing we probably want to try and do some things at the pavilion first. And then, of course, we have to report to you members. So the directors are responsible for doing CCS. We don't come back to the members every time a decision has to be made. That's what the board of directors will do. Those are the current directors. There's no maximum number of directors, but it mustn't be less than 3. That's the quorum. And there is a special resolution tonight to limit it to 8, which is just for practical reasons, really. Otherwise, it does get very difficult. And we're all standing down. And apart from Russell, who's decided to retire in his youth, we're standing for re-election. And, you know, we do need to help. We've all done help tip runs and screwing things in and cutting things. We've done quite a lot. Just moving on to our financial position. Now, this is just the income and expenditure. We'll get, Jane's got a BDI on this. We'll do a proper set of accounts for that period later. It's not due to later in the year. But basically, last year we had income of about 22,000 and expenditure of about 22,000. But the thing is, there was a lot of donations and expenditure that came before that year, before the 1st of December 24, which is what we're talking about there. And you can see that we actually had received about 7,700 in donations in the prior year. So the total number of donations that we received altogether was about £10,000. Okay. The rest of the money that was used, that we got, the Parish Council, through in a variety of ways, through S106 grants, for using reserves that we built up, for going for grants elsewhere, did the actual building work, and that cost about £280,000. So a lot of money. The fitting out That's all the furniture inside, the bar, the lighting, you know, all that sort of thing. That came to, I think, 44,000 altogether, if you count the litter from outside as well. But yeah. So, you know, that's the sort of money we spent. We spent 280 building it, 44 kitting it out, and those are the numbers we've got. Currently, we've got about £3,500 in the bank, plus now the tenant has given us required a security deposit, which was originally £2,000 plus that. And there's about 1730 of that left because we've got 1 or 2 unpaid bills at the moment. And that's what basically the money that we've got in hand. So if you would bear that in mind, so that's about 5,200 altogether in the bank. We've got some costs that we will have to set against that in time. Oh, and that last bullet, it just says, we did set ourselves that we ought to keep £5,000 in our back pocket, just in case little things came up that needed to be attended to. And it would have been £5,000, except we had some electrical work that we had to do. And I guess that's what contingencies is for, isn't it? It's contingencies. So let's talk about current tenancy. So the contract, it's actually a 6-year contract. It does have its first break point in January of next year. Okay? Not this year, next year. The tenant has indicated that he doesn't feel it's right for him to continue. It's his words. He hasn't paid the first rent payment that became due, so he is now in breach. And we are in a position at CCS to terminate that contract. It's shut, of course, but to terminate the contract and retain the security deposit. We have said, yes, you can terminate if you have what we called an orderly exit, which is you leave the place, clean inside and out, repair any damage, which is typically scratches to the paintwork, that sort of thing. Make sure the equipment's serviced. And this is an important one, an uninterrupted transfer to a new tenant. Because of course there are utilities up there, there's electricity and water that have got to be paid for. And what we did with the first tenant and the current one was we made sure there wasn't an interruption. So there wasn't a problem with we paid the electricity or whatever. Well, it was, but not for that reason. If the tenant doesn't have an orderly exit, then we will have to terminate. It's obviously a board decision next week. But we would then have to do all that work ourselves. So we're obviously trying to encourage the tenant to do that work rather than us have to do it. And we'd obviously retain the deposit to give us the funds to do it if it's enough. I have to say we are having a lot of difficulty engaging with the tenant. Now, during January, we arranged 4 meetings, all of which he did not attend. And we have agreed now that we're not going to turn up and just wait for half an hour time. Contact from now and be in writing. We carried out a landlord's inspection at the 30th of January. The place was in a tip from his New Year's party, but he says, tidied it up now. And I imagine the new board will be looking for a landlord's inspection fairly soon, probably if we meet next week, probably the week after, that I would expect. So not a happy state of affairs. Now the sort of tenancy agreement is given some of the features in it. 6 years with a 3-year break point. We gave them an extra break point at 1 year. And the length of it is so that a tenant can recoup the investment they've got to make. It's usually quite substantial, of the order of £25,000 in all of that equipment there. And we gave an initial rent-free period, 6 months, so neither tenant has actually paid us any rent, plus a turnover, a base rent, and then a turnover share, which was something that was recommended to us by an outside accountant. The tenancy agreement defines what the building can be used for, only for a cafe and restaurant and bar. That was originally just to make sure it didn't start competing with Foodie and Dina, turning into a kind of shop. And there are various restrictions, as you might imagine, on, you know, we want it to be professional, we want it to be secure, we want no nuisance to neighbours. There are some commitments to members and to the cricket club. They always used it for teas until we nicked their pavilion, so we have to give them an arrangement so they can have their cricket teas. And we may consider, this be up to the new board, introducing minimum service levels. I'll come back to that later on. The important thing is that CCS doesn't run the business. Okay, we can't tell him you've got to have this beer on, or you've got to offer these cakes, or you've got to be open at this time, or whatever. You know, we can't do that. Whoever the tenant is, they have to be able to run this thing profitably. So within very broad guidelines, if you make them too tight, it makes it very difficult for them to make, you know, have a sustainable business. Within that, he's got to be free, she's got to be free to run the business. So a question that's come up a few times is it viable? You know, is it, are we just got a white elephant? Now, when we did the original tenant put a prospectus out, we had four organisations on a shortlist, all of which thought they'd get a turnover of about 250,000 a year from the building. I've done some modelling. Those of you who know me know I love a spreadsheet. And you know, I think about 150,000 is round about the break even on this. You've got a business at 200,000, and you've got a really good business that get up to 250. Now, Claire actually turned over 29,000 in March. We had access to her figures, which is like 350,000 a year. But of course, that was novelty value, wasn't that? Really was going. But even then, she did 26K in April, 312. And Luke, I don't have his figures for July and August, but he did share with me his September figure, which was 19K, which is still 228,000 a year. So in other words, I think somewhere in the region of the 250,000 ought to be viable for this business. And of course, because we've had a really bad time recently, we kind of forget that actually both Claire and Luke had a really good first 3 months, and actually by and large the feedback was quite positive. You know, they both had difficulties, but you know, so I really do believe in my heart that there is a viable business there if we can just find the right formula to make it run. So why wasn't it successful? Well, first tenant had a very, very high cost base, particularly with staff. And you go in there at times, you find they just wouldn't sustain that. There is some comments that some of her food was perhaps a little bit underpriced, a little bit on the cheaper side. I'm sure people disagree with that. She had a 15% discount, which she did sign up to. You know, she had a business model that said she could do it, but it was just unsustainable. That meant she started having cash flow problems. That meant she had problems with her suppliers, and she was, you know, almost hand to mouth going on buying stuff almost daily. That meant she didn't always have the money to open, so we had unreliable opening, and it just went down into a nasty spiral. With the second tenant, there was a real problem, I think, with the food offering. It was inconsistent with the chefs coming in and not, and eventually went to no food offering. There was fairly poor marketing of events, so he really did work hard at putting on different events up there, but in a lot of cases people just didn't know about it. It was almost just went onto Facebook, and I mean, I personally hate Facebook, but the thing scrolls away, and if you don't catch it, you know, you don't know about it. So those events often turned into being loss-making. We got a fairly dramatic reduction in trade, no food offering and so on, and that got him into the same situation, unreliable opening hours, and it went round into this doom loop. There are other issues, but really don't think we want to discuss it today. And please do remember, this is being live streamed if it's seen by anyone. Anyway. So, various ideas have been put forward about how we might organise an operator to run the pavilion. And the first is that we just do it ourselves. We just do it as a community. And in fact, some of us went to a club when we were in the very early days here, and it was indeed volunteer run. But it was just a pub. It opened, I think, Thursday, Fridays, Saturdays, lunchtimes, I think it was. There were about six blokes who used it as, or seven, seven blokes who used it as it was their bar, basically, and they just ran it and sustained it. But the thing is, if you do that, it does mean that you have to have people who are going to be committed to working regular shifts. And that means if you're going to have a kitchen as well, you're going to have the necessary hygiene qualifications and all the rest of it. Well, you need to be able to cook as well, I guess. You'll need a volunteer manager to make sure all of this is going to, oh, someone's not coming in today, we know I've got to arrange for somebody else to come in. You've got to order the stock, manage the stock. They had quite an interesting way of doing it. They filled up the shelves each morning and checked it against the till to make sure there was no shrinkage. But you can imagine people, perhaps not entirely unreasonably, thinking, well, I'm working a shift, I think I'm entitled to a beer or whatever. And of course, it does eat in. You'd need capital. And I've already mentioned you've got about 20K's worth of equipment to get. And CCS has currently got, as I say, somewhere south of probably about 3 or 4K, if we're lucky. And you also need to have some accountancy skills. You've got to report to HMRC. But most importantly, CCS will be responsible for any losses that are made. And we've seen both the tenants sustain some quite big losses. And with the sort of money that we've got to hand, there just isn't, the capital there to sustain it. So it would be viable, and there's no reason, why it couldn't be, as it's actually called the Mushroom Bar, the one we went to. But it would be hard, and there are some challenges there. Another suggestion that was made was that we could have a mixture of some paid people and some volunteers. In fact, one specific one was, let's have a paid kind of tenant in the cafe side, and then we'll volunteer in the bar in the evening. And again, that might be possible. And certainly having volunteers does reduce the cost base quite a lot. I mean, that's a big thing. But it has actually got all the same problems that you mentioned with, I mentioned with the community run one. You've got to have people prepared to commit to shifts. Well, I won't read it all out again. It's exactly the same thing. And at the end of the day, CCS still ends up being responsible for the losses and surplus, if any surplus ever comes. So now it wasn't that we kind of just plucked the tenant model out of the air when we were looking at this at the end of 2024. We looked at different ways of doing this, and we decided that the tenant was the one that we could live with, and it didn't require huge amounts of time to manage, because we are all volunteers and we've all got other things to do as well. So we went for the tenancy model. Obviously, the pricing then ends up at kind of a market rate. The only comfort you've got is that if you put the prices up too much, people just aren't going to come in. So you've got to do that. The tenant's responsible pretty much for everything, and we are just the landlord and hopefully we get some rent that we can then use to invest in the pavilion or elsewhere in the community. So those are the three models, and I know I've given a kind of steer on this, but you know the discussion has been had by several of you about the other models, and I just wanted to sort of go through those pros and cons, and we can pick it up in a discussion if necessary. A commercial tenant, I think one of the things we have realised, you do need to have someone who's got relevant hospitality and catering experience. You have to have enough financial resources, not only for the startup costs and for the working capital and so on, but also to test new ideas. If you're going to do Sunday lunches, it's not that everyone's going to come in on day one, the first Sunday, and have the lunch. It'll be a few people will come, and you might make a loss. You've got to be capable of sustaining yourself through that. And testing new ideas, the karaoke or whatever it is that you want to do. But we do think the catering skills are important. I mean, Claire did have those catering skills. Hiring chefs can be a little bit hit and miss, but certainly food is key to profitability. And I think that was, as I've already said, I think that was the problem with the second tenant eventually. And I've said, we could consider minimum service levels to make sure someone didn't just come in and say, well, I fancy a cafe, so I just won't open the bar. Or I want to run a pub, I'm just not going to run a cafe. So we've got to make sure that what the village wants is there. And it is clear from the comments that we've had that there's quite a strong demand for the cafe service. But there is also a strong demand, perhaps less so, but there is a strong demand for I call it the pub side. And remember, this all started because the Carrington shut. I mean, that's why we went into it. So what the new board will have to do is got to find a new operator. I've used the word operator, but just to say we've still got those three options subject to discussion. We've got to get the pavilion back into a marketable condition, advertise it. Despite very tight margins in hospitality, I mean, the margins in hospitality are somewhere around about 5–10%. They're not great. So really, the tenants going on for a 15 or 10% discount is just killing the business from the outset. So we've got to have some other alternative member benefits, loyalty schemes, discount evenings, member events, that sort of thing. When we do get some rental income, this is for the board, and looking for a bright future, we need to rebuild that contingency. It's a bit low at the moment. We could do with some illuminated signage. I mean, if any of you have been up there at night, when you go in from the Thrupp entrance, and it's just pitch black. It's I mean, not so much to annoy the neighbours, but you do need to have some and better lighting on the footpath, especially to Lodge Farm Court, where there's no lighting. We've got those little solar stands. We're going to try and get some more. Parish Council applied for a grant on that. So the new tenant process, if we go the tenant route, these are the steps we've got to do. We've got to get the pavilion back to a viewable state. This is the tenant's responsibility. We're not confident that it's going to do it. Publish the prospectus. Draft does exist. It will go to the board next week. Then we'll discuss with the applicants, decide on who the best one is. Negotiate the tenancy agreement because they all want this or that. Get it signed, and then once that's done, the new tenant has got to make all the arrangements. To run the place. It doesn't happen overnight. Dealing with the suppliers to the pumps, the coffee machines, and all of that kind of thing. Hiring and training staff, and then eventually open the business. So it's quite a long slab of time, which is why I said, spoiler alert, this isn't going to happen overnight. It's quite a long process when you look at all those steps and how much time we've got to give for each of those. So that's really where I wanted to take us to try and explain the whole background of what CCS is. our company, this all of ours. So I think, Steve, perhaps we could see if there are any questions or discussion points.
We've got, there's a question there.
Can just start to, is there the cooking facilities then to actually do lots of different things? So, to do some new lunch and stuff like that, is there the actual equipment and is it a viable option to do that?
I might ask Lawrence to answer it, but I think the short answer is yes. I mean, it's not a full-scale kitchen, but it's got a proper cooker, it's got microwave, it's got, I think, two big fridges, freezer.
The answer is it's designed to be able to sustain a 40 caliber. It's not going to be fine dining.
No.
We're limited recruitment.
Okay.
We've eaten Sunday lunch and it's been absolutely brilliant. We've eaten lots of meals there and it's been absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, I had a Sunday lunch there and it was really good, really good.
Plenty of cooking facilities, kitchen was fine.
Yes, no, I agree.
It just, sorry.
How many did you have first time round? How many people were in?
Well, there were a lot of people, I can't remember the number now, but there was quite a large number of people in the teams sent in a response to the original advertisement. We then sent them quite a detailed questionnaire and 4 filled it in properly. And we interviewed each of those 4, which is why I said, they all came that sort of number by way of turnover.
Student idea of really just to bar and cafe and to be a restaurant, is that not trying to be to this time we're looking at it?
But I guess the arguments, I guess it depends. People are going to come with the business proposition, and that could be they're looking for restaurant standard, that could be the cafe standard with simple but good restaurant meals in the evening. That will depend on the operator's offering.
Yeah, sure.
What's the situation with the television? Because things like sporting events.
Well, I mean, we provided television,
Right.
Claire, as you know, did not pay for the licenses for sporting events because I think they are quite expensive. But anyway, she decided not to, and you can use that then to display menus and forthcoming events and things. She have a static display. That's fine. Luke took a different view and did buy a Sky Sports license and did show some events, but we did actually say, sorry?
I never saw an advert for that. You never advertised that.
Well, hey, that is a root cause of a lot of problems.
Yeah.
But I mean, I would say, I think we've removed it in the current draft of the tenancy agreement that we'd go out to a new, but we did have a phrase that we didn't want to turn this into a sports bar.
Right.
Because I don't think, that's actually what if you want to go in there for your tea and cake, you don't necessarily want to have,
So I just wanted
Having said that, there may be 1 or 2 special events that come up, where people will actually go there in order to watch a particularly important match or game or whatever.
You have to say that Luke thought that would increase his proposition. That would attract an audience that would pay for the license fee for the sports coverage, and that never happened. Those Sky fees were about 450,000 per Kelly.
Isn't it based on, I think it's licensed transports, based on the rates? The case, the rates go up, the transports
We'll explain that when we represent. Listen, paying about 450.
Yeah. But if the rates are going up,
Sorry, for me.
What business rates? All right. Okay, Jane has just asked a question about business rates, and I'll just take that because it's been in the news quite a lot. what happened was, in August 2024, when we had substantially built the place, but it wasn't occupiable or fitted out, we contacted the valuation office agency who set business rates and said, can you tell us what the rates will be? Because we could see that we wanted this for prospective tenants. We didn't get an answer until, believe it or not, August 2025. But fortunately, the total business rates there were below the exemption level. So there were no, it was £10,000, exemption level was 12.5. So we didn't worry about it. And then Madam Reeves,
Rachel from accounts.
Rachel from accounts, when almost immediately that she'd sat down, valuation office agency sent everybody an email saying, you better check your business rates, they might have gone up. And it had gone up by 67%. Now, the problem with that was 65% was above the exemption level. However, fortunately, and as you saw from my earlier slide, we do actually sublease to the Sports Association, the Pavilion, and indeed the Cricket Club have got exclusive use of their changing rooms and so on. So Steve did battle royal and submitted a challenge. It was a process called check and challenge, whereby he said it actually should be split into 4, you're the words,
I've forgotten that.
hereditary ones.
Yeah.
Which means that each of those 4 is below the exemption level, so we shouldn't have business rates. Because it's actually scaled, the whole sports ground anyway would only pick up £800 in the first year, and the share there would only be probably 250 or 300. So it's actually very small.
In fact, the bar and cafe restaurant part of it has been rated very low. It's I think about £1,500.
£1,300, yeah.
And it's just ridiculous.
Yeah. Anyway, the point is, hopefully, we can get to a position where they don't have to pay business rates. More questions? Come on.
630 members. Would it be viable to ask for a membership fee, small membership fee? Most clubs that you belong to, you pay an annual fee, and say £20 a year would bring a bit of money to start up with.
Okay. Can I just see what the view would be on that? I mean, at the moment, I should say, when we were first discussing this with Milton Keynes Council about do you remember the parish poll consultant? They did say, and this will be free, won't it, to your members? We're using planning gain, that's 106 money. So there may be a legal wrinkle with that. Can I just ask the group what the feeling is? Because it might be something that the board would consider.
What would the £20 be for?
As a membership, because
Just to be allowed to use it, not because you said any discount.
no discount, no, but most clubs that you belong to, it's like WI, we pay, it's £54 a year and things like that. Most clubs you pay.
So are you saying you wouldn't let anyone else in the door?
You pay your membership fee.
No one else is allowed in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I count that. I'd say we pay £1 or a small fee and membership cards rather than 20 quid and stuff. I pay the card with order.
Yeah, I mean, I must say, I think it would be a bit difficult because this will only be viable if it gets footfall in there. And in fact, both tenants had quite a bit of footfall, not only from Castlethorpe, but from Hounslow, who would come down. And I think, I'm not quite sure what we would give for the membership fee, Yvonne. But I mean,
you pay membership fee, you're more likely to use it more.
No, I disagree there, because there's 630 members.
yeah.
But the members are actually.
His support
a shadow.
it as going in free.
Yeah. I think,
There isn't the support.
yeah,
Nobody is supported with the
yeah,
pavilion.
Hansard Club, that's £20 a year.
Yeah,
yeah,
Right. Bradwell Club, it's free,
yeah,
but you're not getting any benefits at Hansard Club at all. It's no cheaper, it's just cheap in there as it is in the COP.
yeah,
Whereas it used to be cheaper in the club, but it's all changed now, look, tell you
Yeah.
that.
yeah.
But you've got a free, all them members, 630 members, free to go in that pavilion. Why aren't they using it?
Yeah, well, this is it.
They're not using the pavilion.
Yeah.
We've supported both Claire and Lou
Yeah.
all the way through.
Yeah.
And I think, where are all these members?
Yeah.
Because they haven't stepped through that door, but they haven't supported the
Well,
pavilion.
sorry, I think if I can say that the success of this is probably down to the success of the operator if we go for the same model. Actually, boosting the CCS funds isn't going to help the operator in what they're doing, having it all built. Bulk up our bank account, but you know, it's the operator that's, I think, got to make a success of it. And for us to be successful, if we go for the same operator model, they have to be successful.
But they're not going to be successful if the village don't support.
Yeah, that's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that if we build up the CCS bank position, that's not going to help the operator.
It's really sad. I feel sad. The village, we haven't got this. We want this. We want
Yeah.
that. They've got a beautiful place. They don't want to know. They don't want to
Well,
use it.
but the offering has to be right.
Yeah,
The thing is with Castlethorpe, it's not like Hanslope. Hanslope's a drinking village. You see all the lads going out on a Friday night, all in the working clothes, and for an instance, COP, it's packed.
Couldn't possibly cover it.
So, but you name all the young lads, 20, 25, 30 in the village that are grain workers and whatever.
yeah,
They go in up there,
Yeah,
but do you see that type of people in Castlethorpe? You don't.
we are.
It's all older people like us.
yeah. I mean, the other thing.
Yeah, that's the problem, in and out, and our child goes.
Okay. All right, look, I mean, so can we come back? I mean, I think, you know, Steve has said, a lot of it is to do with the offering that's made and whether that's going to appeal.
Yeah.
I think the board can consider whether a membership fee would be appropriate, but to be honest, I don't think that's the nub of the problem here. It's actually getting the football, as you both say, into there, and that means it's got to have an attractive offer. Now, I think, do you want to?
Actually, no, it's just to say that James had hand up for a while and so has Kevin, so if we
Okay.
take James' question first, and
If
then.
I can just say that I think you find that if you have a membership fee, if only half of the village join and pay a membership fee, and you limit it to members, you've got a problem with your grants.
Yeah,
Because it must be open to the whole community.
I think that's right.
you're right, and it's going to be a real pain actually. But
Yeah, but I don't know.
All right.
Council, you spoke on the membership, not the tenant.
Yeah.
The membership fees don't go to the tenant.
No, no, no,
That's what we say.
it's CCS.
Yeah.
CCS, you see, if that,
Oh.
it has to be open to the community, so if you only have half the village or a third of the
Yeah.
village paying a membership fee. And you limit special things to members only events, you can't do that.
No, I think you're right. I'm pretty certain that was raised with us when a couple of years ago when I was negotiating.
Yes.
Kevin, who was next next, I
I
think.
think you covered this already, Phil, in your slides, but everyone, I'm sure, knows someone, neighbours, friends, family around who have gone, when he's asked for support, have gone up there. Come on, family, let's go up there, because he said he's open. Oh, what, how embarrassing, he's not open, or he's not serving food. He said he was open, look, here's the page, and it's not. So any business, whether it's printing or catering or building, whatever it is, if you say you're going to be open, you need to have consistent days and hours, set those, be open, and be willing to expect that you may have quiet times. But if you've been open for 3 months and no one came on a Monday, understandable, don't open on Mondays, and there's one shot.
Yeah, but I mean, and I
But
think.
you might go 1 day open and then 1 day
Yeah,
closed.
and the corollary is that you've got to tell people when you're open.
Yeah.
Just.
Advertise
I mean,
and speak to
I've been up several times.
Yeah.
Down the shut, and you'd think I'd be open.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who's next? Steve?
Matt,
When you look at your business models, did you consider splitting it between cafe tenants and pub tenants that way then? Because people like Luke, he hasn't had cafe experience and he's trying to run a cafe, whereas Claire, if they had pub experience, trying to run a pub. So would it splitting it be better?
Well, we did think about splitting it, because you're quite right, there are two different characteristics, if you like, the cafe side and the pub side. The problem is you've got a lot of shared areas, like the kitchen. Now, how are you going to manage your hygiene ratings and so on, and if you're sharing the kitchen, it's actually almost unmanageable. Who's going to hold the liquor license, or is the cafe not going to be able to serve, a glass of wine at lunchtime? I mean, it really does get very difficult. We really did think about it quite hard, and we decided it was not really practical.
So
and I think that
it's a cafe or a bar, it's not gonna be a cafe bar. So if a couple took it over, surely the lady could run it in the day as a cafe. Coffees, light lunches, cakes, and then maybe, I'm not being sexist, but maybe the husband.
Yeah.
Because obviously a woman perhaps wouldn't wanna be, if she's got children, she wouldn't wanna be doing the daytime. But it could be both, it could work
I think
as both, if you've
I think
got the
you're right.
right
Yeah.
people. So you could have a cafe in the
I
daytime,
think Luke's
and then
situation,
later,
Is all
Luke's
right.
situation might have been different if his
why,
personal
yeah.
things hadn't have worked out as they did.
yeah,
If it had been the two of them, it might have been completely different. Because he was basically chucked in at the deep end on his own.
it may have been, it may not, though, in circumstances.
Right.
Right, yes.
Because it is a cafe bar.
Yeah.
Oh, to try and raise.
Oh, Lawrence.
It was just a point mentioned earlier that this would be live stream publicly. It's the tent.
Not everyone knows.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's about totally.
Yes, it's very, lady of the.
You talked about the fact that there was the demand for a cafe from the village. I mean, when it was open, particularly say in Clare, I mean, was there demand? Did people come in the day? Because to the cafe, and was it busy? 'Cause
Well, she did quite a good trade at lunchtime, and in fact, she did share. The reason we have her numbers in those first couple of months was because when she came to us and said, "I can't stand this, sustain this discount level," we said, "Well, you need to show us your numbers as to, to justify it, because we signed this contract with you, and we've told the village this, And when she shared the numbers with us, it was pretty much on turnover terms, 50-50 between food and drink, wet and dry, as she called it, well, as we called it.
In actual fact, figures you put up there, both tenants, monthly figures were quite good, weren't they?
Yeah, they were.
They were on projection, what
Yeah.
expected, yeah.
Yeah.
The demand is there, and it was huge, it was 20
Yeah, I think I truly believe that this is a viable opportunity if it's run right, and I think you need the experience to do that.
I have to tell you, over the summer, it was rocky. There were lots of people sitting outside with the families. It was really, really, absolutely everything that we were looking to do.
And I mean, when we talk about having to have some financial resources, January, February are killer months for hospitality. You know, so you've got to be able to see yourself through that. Anyway.
Is there any more?
There's one thing.
To build up that reputation, and if they're doing that, if it's good into the system, people will then, you know.
Yeah,
yeah.
It would have gone on, but once you start to get off, it was going to come to no food, that just spreads quicker than anything and.
Yeah.
and in villages it does spread very quickly, not only to this village but Tansford as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Joys of Facebook, then.
Yeah.
But a lot of, we supported both tenants.
Yeah.
No names mentioned, all through.
Yeah.
The pavilion, we didn't care, did we, if we didn't get discount?
No.
That don't bother us, we're not into discount, we're into supporting,
Yeah.
and that's what we want.
And there was a good deal of public support, and people did try to help.
And don't think it's only the pavilion, but we drink a lot in Hanslow. The pubs had to not serve food because they weren't getting the support. You're not going to buy hundreds of pounds worth of Sunday lunch food and get one person walk through the door.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. It was tried. People didn't support it. You're losing money. You've got to support something that's on your doorstep.
Yeah.
Are there any more questions at all? Oh, Jack.
Can I just ask about the original business plans that people submitted? Did they have a full marketing plan as well? As well as the finance?
I'll go back. Yeah, they did. They talked about how they were going to.
Yeah.
How they were going to do it. Yes, they
Oh,
did.
right,
Yeah.
I actually had a PR person at work. I have a PR person that does the marketing.
Oh, yes.
Very professional. Okay, shall I sit down?
Okay, if that's said, then current board will stand down or sit down. And we'll hand over to Gordon, the secretary, to announce the result of first the resolution on the
You do the
directors.
No.
Well, I'll do the first one next.
No, we said no.
So basically, actually, Gordon's got better eyesight. I know they don't get that, so you say not very fun. So this is the outcome of the vote on whether there should be a maximum of 8 directors or not.
The vote for the proposal for limiting the directors to 8 was in favour of 92.2%. So that's a very high result.
So it looks like,
Yeah, as you mentioned, the number of responses.
128 responses.
that's good.
So it's a fair proportion.
So we run with 8 directors. And now we step down and
We are the directors.
results of the elections.
Results of the elections. I've got, yeah, I'll just get them on.
Do you want to send it that way?
That's it. Okay. So, I'm just the company secretary, the only official on board. So the result of the elections are, Mr. Philip Ayles, received 100 votes and is elected. Julie Barry received 65 votes and is elected. Stephen Bradbury received 83 votes and is elected. Gordon Fleming received 74 votes and is elected. Ian Horn received 56 votes and I'm afraid did not make the election. Debbie Lloyd received 60 votes and is elected. Matt Malloy received 76 votes and is elected. Catherine McDermott received 89 votes and is elected. Jane Olive received 50 votes, I'm afraid not elected. And Luke Stacey, seconded by David, he received 69 votes and is elected. Did I do Kevin McDermott? No, I did Yeah, I don't know one way round there. Kenny McDermott received 50 votes, not elected, and Jane Owen 44 votes, not elected first. Got those wrong way round. So, our 8 directors are Philip Ayles, Geordie Barry, Stephen Bradbury, Gordon Fleming, Debbie Lloyd, Matt Malloy, Catherine McDermott, and Rick Stacey.
Yeah, thank you very much for everyone that.
We've got a first board meeting date next Wednesday, about the 11th, 7:30 here in the village hall.
Like I say, thanks for everyone that applied, and you know, there's still stuff to do and involvement to be involved in. So please do keep in touch.
Well, we'll keep in touch with you, I promise you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right, thanks for Russell.
Okay.
So you're hosting
all
a
these
meeting.
comments.
Well, if there is nothing else, well,
Well, we CCS will just keep the village members informed through emails or on the.
that key there.
Yeah.
The town.
If you said yes to notifications on your application, you're in an email list that is given to the tenant. So they can send you emails about events. And they should be doing that already.
Yeah, I mean, we'll certainly encourage new tenants to do that.
Well, we're trying to encourage the existing ones.
We did.
Yeah. And you know, there's a board there are 2 boards immediately outside the pavilion that have been blank ever since they were put up. So, you know, you can have opening hours and events on there. And we have said that there are many notice boards around the village, I think it's 6 or 7, and you just go around and you put notices up there and say, you know, this is what's going on. So there should be plenty of opportunities to advertise, as well as the famous Facebook.
Will you advertise to other villages?
Well, again, that is up to the tenant to decide,
Yeah.
but I mean, I think some of them, I think Hanslope in particular is relatively generous in allowing people to advertise on their Facebook. I mean, we actually, the parish council here has got a policy, we call it the 4 village policy, which is we allow Hanslope, obviously Castlethorpe, Havisham and Cosgrove, you know, to put adverts up. But there you go.
Right, if there's nothing else, we'll call this meeting closed. And thank you all for coming out on such a damp and dismal night. Thank you.